Hello and welcome to the first lesson. In this lesson, we're going to have a look at how to generate terrain and numerous ways of doing so. So there are quite a lot of different software for terrain generation. We're going to be focusing on two. We're going to be focusing on Gaea, and we're going to be looking obviously at Houdini. I personally love both, but Gaia itself is kind of like more terrain focused more. So the noises and the rest are like a little bit better than Houdini. Don't get me wrong, Houdini is still good to generate terrain, and I'm going to show you how to do that as well. But for now, let's focus on Gaia. So let's start like building our environment, see how it goes. So I found this reference online. This is something that I think I want to do because it gives us perfect chance to explore different types of terrain pieces. Like we have lots of rocks here, we have some vegetation, we have also those gnarly trees. We're not going to be necessarily making this exact image, but we're going to be kind of like doing similar style thing. So let's start with landscape because that's the first thing I usually do when I'm making scenes like this is I'm making a landscape and just playing around with noises, see what I like, and then kind of like come up with something. You can also follow the reference if you want. Probably you should, because in production typically you do have a reference. But I'm more like, especially for personal projects, I prefer to just kind of like mess around, see what happens. Like throw stuff against the wall, and if it sticks, it sticks. So here we have the Gaia interface. We have just a starting plane with nothing on it. I'm going to start dropping nodes and explain them as I go, and hopefully when we can come up with something cool. So first thing you can do is you can open, for example, examples, right? There's plenty of examples here. And if you want to say, hey, I want to do a debris or, like a mixer erosion or a mesa, if you open one of those examples up, it's going to give you all the nodes you need to create this thing. So this is how it looks like. And keep in mind, this is not the final image. It's just 1K resolution. And we're also not going to be using the texture from Gaia because it's a bit useless in Unreal. It's just going to look blurry. It's good for other pieces of software, but not for Unreal specifically. So it starts with, for example, plates, which is this node. You can modify all the settings here. Then the radial gradient is edges, so you only have height information in the middle. And then they slowly kind of like chisel and apply different nodes and also coloring ends up looking like this, which is pretty cool. I'm gonna go ahead and open my empty scene, which I already saved inside the project source content. You can just open, let's say, empty scene and start from there. So here's my scene. Let's drop. I want to start with the mountain range because we had quite a lot of mountains in the reference. So let's go with mountain range. And it doesn't look like much. There is not a lot of elevation. It kind of looks pretty tame. Keep in mind that we can also adjust the height later inside Houdini or even here. It doesn't matter to us. But what I do want is height to be much bigger than that. So maybe like 2.5. And this looks already better. We have quite a lot of different elevation and there's lots of mountains. They're all like super sharp, not particularly great. You can play with style, let's say basic, eroded, stratified, and alpine. The only really different looking one is alpine. We're gonna go with eroded for now and play with seed a little bit. So that would be nice. I'm just not a big fan of those. This mountain is like a little bit too big for me. Maybe let's just continue playing with noises, see what happens. And oftentimes that's what you're going to be doing, just playing with noises, really. That's what terrain is. Sometimes you just stumble upon a noise and you're like, oh, this is great. And then you accidentally click off it. And because this program doesn't have Control Z option, you lose it forever, which is a little bit silly, but it is what it is. Also play with scale a little bit. So let's say 0.2. It's going to be more of this information here. Okay, so this is not too bad. We have quite a lot of you know, information on this height map right now. We have quite a few mountains, and we have a nice valley where we can place our player. And then we have a mountain distance. I think this is quite okay. There is this noise called outcrops. And outcrops, basically, well, you can see what it does. It kind of adds like those plates, like rocky plates all over the place, which is pretty cool. And we can also play with shape and density. Let's say density to like 0.1, see what it does. So as you can see, it removed some of the plates, so they're not that often happening. So you still have this nice valley. Let's lower the density like 0.05, see what that does. You still have a few plates, and then this valley is completely free. That's basically extra like elevations. You see, this is like the outcrop effect, and I'm quite okay with that. That's quite a lot of interesting details to our map. Maybe 0.1. Let's go back and then play with the seed a little bit. I kind of want to keep this valley here free of anything. This looks kind of nice, actually. I like it. Let's don't forget to save because Gaea has a tendency of crashing quite a lot. I think this is quite okay. We have, yeah, I think this is gonna work for us. Cool. Okay, and next we're gonna do a stratify effect, which is basically adds a bunch of like lines across the terrain and giving it even further deformation. And let me just have a look at my settings real quick because I've done it before. We're gonna do a spacing of 0.1. Direction is fine. As you can see, it's like stratifies the whole map. Like you can see those lines going across. And what we're gonna do next is we're gonna duplicate this. So Control D doesn't work, unfortunately. It says it does, but for some reason on my end it doesn't. So just duplicate this guy to apply even further stratification, but this time we're going to change spacing to like 0.3. So there's a bigger distance between those lines. And octaves, we can 9, which is basically less noisy. And now you can see here we have a lot of them, and here we have less of them, but they're like more aggressive. We can also play with like shapes and stuff. So like 0.5 on shape, for example, see what that does. See the amount as well. You can change it and change the tilts. So like, for example, this kind of looks okay to me. And they have this nice noise. Looks like a desert rock or something. This is actually perfect to, you can export this height map as is and use it inside Substance Designer. And then, create like textures from it. It works quite nice. So if you're like me and you're not a big fan of Designer, you can use this instead. Problem is it only works with, like rocks and sand and stuff like this. Anyway, so you have those two stratify layers, and now we're gonna do a slope blur to smooth it out a little bit. So slope blur. I'm gonna connect last one to the guide and the first one to the input, and you can see it's gonna smooth it out considerably. And if you click on normalize, it's gonna smooth it out even further. And this is really cool terrain. I really like it. I'm not a big fan of like these kind of pieces, like sticking out parts really too much, but we can always edit it. But I do like how it looks. It has quite a lot of information here, which is kind of great. And then we're gonna use a sandstone node to basically like remove some of that stuff. So just drop a sandstone. And as you can see, if you go between the two of those, you can see it starts like from the top, which is cool. And that's exactly what I wanted. Let's go back to our sandstone. And let's do like 3 passes maybe. The more passes you have, the more it's going to try to take away. So 3 passes removes decent amount of information from our terrain, and it's kind of like smooths it out. So iteration spacing is fine. Maybe let's do 0.2, see what happens. You'll get like, it's going to be a little bit intimidating at first, but you'll get super used to it pretty quick. what nodes do, and there's many more nodes in there. I'm just showing you like a fraction of what the software can do. I kind of like that. Let's continue. Can also play with the seed a little bit more. I'm just trying to remove all those nasty sticking out pieces because I really hate them. Okay, this is quite nice. Yeah, let's stick with that. Let's just go with this. Then we can later decide where we're gonna put our character. Maybe like here, and there's gonna give us a nice look on this valley. Okay, so another thing you can do before we start using erosion on this guy is do terraces. So not thermal shaper, it's gonna be called a terrace. Fractal terraces, there we go. Play with spacing. So terraces basically creates those sharp, like almost 90-degree elevations. You can clearly see it here. If I like zoom in a little bit more, this is a terrace. See what it does? And maybe intensity we can do like 2.7. Yeah, this is a bit better. And spacing set to 0.15. Let's do 0.1 or maybe more instead. This is pretty intense. Let's do 0.2. I think that's enough. Okay, so we have this nice rocky terrain with decent elevation and terraces. And now we're gonna drop, I wanna like remove a bunch of noise from the bottom of this terrain. So let's drop in, so we drop a thermal 2. Yeah, there we go, that's the one I wanted. And it kind of like smoothes out those, you can see it's like less sharp. And duration we can set to like 0.3. So it's even less sharp, or it's removing a little bit too much detail for my liking. Maybe 0.1, yeah, 0.1 is fine. Yeah, that's what I want. I don't want too much to be erased because it's pretty trigger happy. And strength, we can have a look what it does. Maybe 0.4. You can see the feature scale is kind of like eating away at the edges a little bit more and more, so be very careful with it. We still want to keep all our elevation. Maybe 0.22. Just 2.2. Yeah, that's fine. Cool. If at any point you want to have a look at, like, go back to the mountain node and try different seed value, but you want to see the final result, you can always press F on the final node. So let's press F. Okay, so press F on this bit here. It's going to keep this node forever active in the viewport. And you can go backwards to your node graph and play with noises. It's going to take a while to update, so if you want to wait a little bit less, you can change the resolution to 512 by 512 instead of 1K. And once you're happy with the result, you can go ahead and change the resolution back to 1K or even 2K to preview like how it's going to look like in the end. So I couldn't find that seed value that I used before, but I think this looks quite okay as well. The seed value is 52,527 if you're following along. Let's check our outcrops again. Outcrops look okay. Let's maybe change the seed value. Oh, this is quite nice. Yeah, this is quite a lot of detail. Stratify. Stratify again. Slope. Blur. So it's a bit smoother. It's quite nice. Sandstone to remove those pesky sharp spikes sticking out. Then we're gonna do a fractal terraces. Actually, you know what? I'm not a big fan of those. They're removing like too much stuff. I mean, they're okay. Suppose we can keep them. And thermal erosion is gonna smooth out all those valleys, so we have really nice smooth valleys, like where the mountains start. You have this nice debris fall off, which is great. Not a big fan of this spike, but we can always just ignore it, I suppose. So now we're gonna be 100% the way you want it, because there's no like tool here to just go in and remove this specific bit, unfortunately. But I think we can work with this. And then finally we're gonna drop in another erosion, just super basic erosion 2. and duration set to like 1. Let's see how it looks. Just a bit more eroded than before. Down cutting, we're gonna remove the down cutting to like 0.05. Erosion scale suspended load, it's fine. This bit is gonna basically make sure that next to the highly elevated areas like here, you're gonna have a lot of like sand building up and stuff. And that's what erosion is for. It basically like erodes pieces of the terrain. And this looks quite nice. I'm not sure about the too smooth now, you know what I mean? We can always have a look at 2K resolution, see how the final details look. It's gonna take a second to update. Yeah, as you can see, it's still pretty smooth, even with 2K resolution. So there are a bunch of ways of dealing with this. My personal favorite is I have quite a lot of height maps already saved. So I'm just gonna have a look at my collection real quick, and I'm gonna supply those maps for you so you can use them too. So for example, let's have a look at just really fine grained noise. Like this might look quite nice, this might look quite nice. Maybe apply those. And to do that, you need to drop in a file node. And let's just find this folder. And I think we quite like this noise right here. So 07, let's do that. And obviously it's a bit too much. So let's drop in adjust node. And adjust, we're gonna clamp the upper value. Sorry, he clamped the lower value instead. So clamp the higher value. It's gonna basically reduce the overall height of this terrain. So like 0.15 maybe. See how that looks like. And then we're gonna get the out from here and we're gonna do transpose. And the reference, we're gonna plug in our height map that we just imported into the reference. And we can also adjust the amount of transposition. So I just want maybe 0.3. And as you can see, it's already gazillion times better. You have this nice noise on top of the original terrain that we did. Maybe 0.5. Yeah, this looks quite nice. And maybe let's drop another one just to see how it looks. Like I said, Control D for some reason just doesn't work for me. But if you manually duplicate it, it's fine. And another one noise, we're just gonna drop in like something super sharp. Maybe like this. It's a bit too sharp. Let's press in an F on your keyboard to lock the adjust node to the viewport, like I said before. Okay, this is what I was looking for. This like really, really sharp, tiny noise. I think this is gonna work quite nice. And we're gonna duplicate this guy and transpose again. And 0.3, for example. Cool. So maybe a bit too much. 0.2. Okay, so overall we went from this, which is super smooth and eroded, to a little bit more noise on the top. I'm not quite sure if this noise is working, to be honest with you. I like this, but this I think is too much. Let's look at something else. No, I don't like this. Okay, maybe this. Yeah, keep this. 0.3, maybe. And remember, our character is tiny. Like he's gonna be like somewhere here. Like this is a approximate scale. Okay, so we have quite a bit of things here, and obviously I'm doing this live, so normally I would spend much more time just sitting and like tuning the noises, see that the shapes are correct. So I encourage you to do so. I'm gonna stop the video here and I'm gonna have a look how can I, make it look even better. And I'm gonna show you right after. Okay, so what I ended up doing is I changed the seed value again, it looks like this now. I also increased the scale to 0.96 to get a little bit more elevation, but then I decided that because I really hate those sharp jagged edges, I'm just going to put a just node and clip it at 0.59 height value. So it kind of like clips all those jagged edges at the top. And this is what you end up with. And I really liked it because it has, and you have mountains around it. So it's going to be plenty of places for us to set up the character and the camera. And then the rest is the same. So we have outcrop, stratify, slope blur to make it less aggressive, sandstone to remove detail from the top, then erode, 2 levels of erosion, thermal for the bottom, and another level of erosion just a little bit to smooth out, and then 2 noises at the top, the ones we had from our height map, and this is what you end up with. And I think it's okay. I think it's going to serve our purpose. Now we just need to export it out. And let's just drop an export node. You can also export textures out of this program. I wouldn't recommend it. I would rather export like masks and stuff. So you just export a mask. And we're going to have a look at the masks as well in a second. But for now, let's just export it as is. We're going to need PNG16 because that's what it just works better with Houdini. For Houdini button here, but I just don't like using it. I just like to have full control over stuff that happens. I want this file separately and safely exported where I want it. So let's go to our content source, which is here, content source, inside our Unreal project. Go to Gaea. Then we're gonna go in and create a new folder called output. Save this folder. Well, copy the path really. Set the custom path. Select folder, and then the important thing you need for export. So right click, find mark for export, and only then it will export. And this is all looking fine. We're gonna go to build. It's gonna say build XR, but don't worry about it. It's gonna export PNG. Press build, and by default it builds with 2K resolution, which I think is fine for us. So start building. And when it's done, it's gonna ask you to press any button to exit, so you just exit. And you should have in your folder the export. And of course I didn't name it, so it's just gonna be default export. We should probably name that. And here's how your height map is going to look like. It doesn't look a lot like what you see here, but we can go to Houdini because that's where we're going to be editing it further. So you go to OBJ level and type in a file first. It's going to create a file. And or maybe we should call it landscape. I'm going to dive in, delete default file, and type in height field file. And here we're going to find, let's find our folder. So procedural content source, Gaea out, and then we're going to find this export. And it's going to look like nothing because by default height scale is set to 1. So I typically go 256, see how that looks. And as you can see, it's reading the whole map correctly. And a decent amount of details in there. And we can start creating masks for this guy and edit it further and maybe export some more masks from Gaea. So I'm going to finish this lesson here, and that's in the next lesson. We're going to look how to export more maps. Thank you. I'll see you in the next lesson.